Hello there. Here we are with issue 51, and this is the bonus issue. So in this issue, we're going to talk about the Thai SA bomber, and so the SA would be surface assault. I just recently learned that, so that's kind of funny. Let's go ahead and dig into it. So it's again from the Sanar fleet systems. They tend to build a lot of stuff for the Empire and the Republic before that. Its length is 9.2 meters long. Acceleration is 2,380 Gs. That's pretty darn good. Um, Megalight is only 60 though. Maximum speed is 850 kilometers per hour in atmosphere, so not real fast. It's got no hyperdrive, no shields. It's got the targeting system of a SF ST dash. Changing my glasses because I'm getting old. SB or 7B targeting computer. Armament is 2 SFL laser cannons, 2 proton torpedo launchers, 2 concussion missiles, 2 concussion missile launchers, variable loads of the Armatech orbital mines, the Armatech proton bombs, and thermal detonators, and only 1 pilot for a crew. So let's go ahead and go through this. Sanar's fleet's first attempt at adding the ground targeting bomber to the Thai series was the Thai GT, must be for ground targeting. They're so clever, which proved effective in the early years of the Imperial rule. This ship's chief weakness, its small payload, was addressed in the Thai SA that soon succeeded it as the Navy's frontline assault bomber. Although Imperial forces and backwater systems continued to use the earlier ships for some years, the design team addressed the problem of increasing its load capacity in a radical way. Although it was actually an entirely logical development given the modular nature of the Thai series. The Thai GT had its main control pod elongated from a sphere to a cylinder to add a bomb bay behind the pilot. This feature was retained in the Thai SA, but the ship's capacity was increased at a stroke by adding a second pod to the left of the pilot, which housed a pair of multi-purpose warhead launchers. It was a formidable weapon with a capacity of 15 tons. A Thai bomber could deploy a formidable array of 64 thermal detonators, 16 concussion missiles, 12 proton torpedoes, 8 proton rockets, 6 orbital mines, or 4 proton bombs, depending on the mission profile. In a less destructive capacity, the Thai bombers were also used to drop propaganda, and some were even converted to carry small squads of troops. So that's pretty interesting. The price paid for the extra load capacity that was the dual hull made the ship much larger and heavier, although its bulk inevitably meant that it was less maneuverable than other Thai series starships. The factory compensated for the extra mass by fitting larger curved wings to increase the area of the solar panel to give a higher power output to the solar ionization chamber, which it was not expected to engage enemy fighters directly. It could target them with its missiles from a distance and was also equipped with 2 long wing-mounted laser cannons I don't know why I said long, 2 wing-mounted laser cannons for defense in a dogfight. Despite this, opponents tended to view the lumbering bombers as easy prey. One thing about it was here, usually the Thai series, unusually for the Thai series, the Thai bomber was equipped with life support system, but its pilots still wore flight suits for protection in the event of an emergency that required them to use the cockpit ejection system. So there you go. They still wore their stuff, but it was good to go inside. The weapons pod was equipped with a lethal array of munitions to suit the range of targets. The main drop chute launched proton bombs, the key ordnance, which delivered a destructive shower of high-velocity subatomic particles particles, but as these could be blocked by particle deflector shields, the bomber carried other elements of the Imperial arsenal, such as guided concussion missiles or proton torpedoes. The center of the pod had a missile firing port with a force field projector and an ordnance maneuvering arm to load and launch its deadly cargo. Um, like most of the TIE series, the TIE bomber was not equipped with shields or hyperdrive. We kind of went through that. Um, Deployment. The bombers were usually carried into action by capital ships, and Imperial Star Destroyer generally held a squadron of 12. Standard procedure for them was for them to be escorted into action by more agile starfighters that could handle any opposition while leaving the less maneuverable bombers to engage the target with surgical precision. Although the bombers' lack of speed, shield, or hyperdrive could be seen as a weakness, they suited the Imperial Navy's philosophy of throwing overwhelming numbers of inexpensive, mass-produced ships at any potential threat. Pilots were ultimately expendable. Throughout the Galactic Rebellion, TIE bombers participated in numerous strikes aimed at quelling the insurrection around the galaxy. During the evacuation of Yavin, after the Rebel Alliance destroyed the Death Star, TIE bombers were sent to attack the Great Temple. They were deployed in a similar way during the evacuation of Hoth, when they attacked the Rebel transports that attempted to escape from the blockade of the planet. The TIE bombers served the Imperial purpose well throughout their service history. Um, Late arrivals. Lucasfilm designed the TIE bomber before the release of Star Wars: A New Hope, pardon me. But although the Death Star was documented as carrying them, they did not appear in the movie. They remained unseen until Marvel Star Wars comic number 15 came out in June 1978, basically a year later, but made their movie debut in Empire Strikes Back when they were sent to flush the Millennium Falcon out of the Hoth asteroid field. They also appeared briefly in Return of the Jedi. There you go. Pod racing on Tatooine. So this was a bit interesting because one of the things that it talks about was that it, pod racing was kind of a uh, band type of thing, so that was kind of cool. Um, So it talks about the origin, which okay. Basically, it said that this is kind of interesting though, as far as the origin goes. So supposedly, according to the legend, um, the races were animal-drawn carts, and they were so-called Hanno speeders. When racer Gustav Wenbus entered the event in a Malastare with a special pod designed by a mechanic called Phoebos, the modern era of pod racing dawned. This vehicle combined a repulsor lift pod with flaming jet engines, a model that would evolve through the centuries. So basically, he would have tore them up. Um, so uh, One of the things, it was um, since it was a sport that was rarely encountered in higher echelon of the galaxy, it often attracted less civilized crowd who cheered when racers found themselves hanging on for their lives on the trickiest tracks through the caves on ice or over water. Um, was avidly followed by sports bars, gambling book clubs across the entire galaxy. Lawless World seemed to attract the sport because gambling on rare races results could be organized locally. Big money. Since the desert planet of Tatooine was Hutt space during the last decades of the Galactic Republic, the Hutts had nothing to fear from the Republic interventions for violations they committed against the Convention of Civilized Systems. If Hutt crime lords were allowed to keep slaves, the Republic certainly wouldn't intervene with their pod race revenues. And part of that came into I thought it said something about that um they were like outlawed or something like that, but I didn't see it again here. But maybe I just kind of assumed that due to that part. Though Tatooine was home to several pod race tracks and races, it was renowned for organizing the most prominent pod race in the entire professional galactic pod race circuit, the Boonta Eve Classic. Held on the Huttese holiday of Boonta Eve, which commemorated Hutt victory. This pod race was one of the highlights of the season. The race attracted a massive crowd of pod race fanatics and tourists from across the galaxy. To house the spectators, the Hutts built the Mos Espa Grand Arena in a natural canyon on the edge of the Western Dune Sea, marking the start and finish of the Mos Espa circuit. The arena was constructed of sandrock. Just trying to go through here. Opposite the arena stood the pinnacle, a large vertical rock that once was a sacred site for the Sand People. The sacrilegious intervention of the pod racing earned the enmity of the Sand People towards the circuit and the racers. Although building their start and finish was the large L-shaped pod race pit, below was the pod race pit hangar. A rumor said that Jabba the Hutt actually shipped this hangar from Malastare in blocks. The hangar was the place where racers waited before the race. Blah blah blah. So yeah, because of the fact that this was basically built in a sacred area, that's why the Sand People fired at him. Uh, I would talk you through the Boonta Eve thing, but if you watch Phantom Menace, you don't need me to explain the whole cycle of the Boonta Eve. Um, the decline of the sport, pod racing on Tatooine, revolved around betting on the races sponsored by the powerful Hutt Kajetics. Um, as powerful individuals and groups earned a lot of profit from pod racing, the lethal sport was never truly outlawed. However, Rats Tyrell Foundation, set up by the Deland Tyrell after his father was killed, gathered support and followers in the years leading up to the Clone Wars. More and more criminal aspects of the sport were exposed, and several famous racers were arrested for serious crimes. To make matters worse, pod racing was outlawed in the core. So it was outlawed. Yeah, that's right. Attendance dropped more than 50% in 10 years. Though the pod racing never completely ceased to exist, decline in its it declined in popularity, only to be replaced by other dangerous sports. So yeah, it was outlawed in the core, so you had to go out to the outer rim and whatnot to do the pod racing thing. Um, so yeah, again, this just continues talking about the Boonta Eve race. So not going to really go through that because, like I said, if you saw the movie, you don't need me to explain it all. Um, Sound design, ILM devised several methods during the Mos Espa Grand Arena alive. Oh, to bring it alive. Man, I need to learn how to read, Gary. Holy crap. Parts of the seating area were shot in Tunisia with extras who were cloned and repositioned by ILM. The arena itself was a large miniature model that was extended by digital matte paintings. The crowds in the miniature were multicolored cotton wool swabs. The sound of the spectators of the pod race came from football matches where Ben Burt and Matthew Wood had recorded several hours of cheering from the audience. The entire pod race sequence became a marvel in sound design. So I'm curious because this is written in England if they mean football matches as in soccer or if they're actually talking about a football game as in the NFL. Kind of interesting. I would assume that it was probably, NFL or college football or something. Because I would guess that they would have been recording that like here in the States before they, that's where they would be working out of at ILM. Who knows? Let's talk about power cores. So power cores are self-contained generators made in many shapes and sizes to meet the galaxy's energy consumption needs. The high output versions carried on board starships are among the vessel's most vital pieces of equipment, as they are what keep the whole system running. So there you go. Um, the most efficient high output power cores are energized by pulling hypermatter into real space, which where its destruction releases high amounts of energy. Alternative but far less powerful types of power core use chemical reactions or fission or fusion based reactors. These are scalable technologies which allow power cores to be made in ranges of sizes starting with small disposable and portable devices and ending with large units found deep in the heart of vast starships. So there you go. Sounds like most starships are going to be using the ones that use the hypermatter, so that's pretty cool. Portable and permanent devices. Portable power cores are um, repositories of energy big enough to supply a survey team or scouting mission. The Rebel Alliance equipped its bases and mobile units with this type of unit as it fought the Galactic Empire, so that Luke Skywalker was able to light his temporary camp on Dagobah and recharge his astromech droid with one. Such power cores will gradually become depleted at a rate that depends on the energy drained from them, but they can be recharged. So essentially, think of a rechargeable battery. So yeah. Um, Large, more permanent power cores were installed on planets around the galaxy to meet the needs of the citizens. Such power cores generate their own power and are at the heart of galactic civilization. Their design varies across the galaxy depending on make, model, and age, and most cities need more than one. The city world of Coruscant boasts thousands of such power plants across the planet. They are also vital for the operation of the armed forces, both at planet-side facilities and onboard spaceships or starships. They always call them starships. So obviously that makes sense. I mean, they're going to need them everywhere. That's how they get their energy. Starship power cores. If a starship was a living organism, the power core would be the beating heart and a key factor for defining its abilities. The make and model of the unit usually decides how much power the ship's hyperdrive generator can draw upon when jumping into hyperspace, and how quickly that particular ship can access the power that is available to our systems. The power core is also used for a host of lesser functions. When developing the YT-1300 freighter project at its orbital shipyards, the Corellian Engineering Corporation sourced its power core from the specialist manufacturer Quadex, the same supplier used by the Imperial Navy some years later. CEC's engineers mounted the YT-1300 Quadex hypermatter annihilation power core in the central hub where it would be afforded maximum protection from damage or destruction in the event that the ship had suffered a catastrophic damage or fell under attack from pirates. The Millennium Falcon, at first glance, Millennium Falcon still seems to be powered by the standard Quadex hypermatter annihilation she came with, which looks very much like it did when the ship was brand new. But a long in the tooth starship engineer who takes a closer look would discover that her power plant was actually retooled at some point in the past, long before Lando Calrissian owned the ship, let alone before she went to Han Solo and Chewbacca. The Falcon's power core was modified to feed energy directly to the ship's AG-2G quad laser cannons, one of the many special modifications likely to be blamed on Solo if the ship were ever returned to her manufacturer. So there you go. And this is the Quad X power core, specifically the one from the Millennium Falcon. It is energized by hypermatter particles, tachyonic material, basically tachyons, that exist in hyperspace. It works by pulling the matter into real space and annihilating them as they are accelerated to infinite speed within the reactor. Vast amounts of energy are produced in the process and channeled for hyperspace jumps. There you go. So that is the end of this episode, and there's a quick review of what all we did. And here we are looking at some of the painting suggestions and whatnot that they talk about. So this was 52 and 50, or 51, 52. Again, we're going to get our ring, another piece of framework, some detail parts that maybe we'll be putting on sometime soon. And this will be the part of the top that goes along the corridor into the cockpit. So that will be in issue 52. Hopefully you guys like that, and you guys continue enjoying those. And I will say thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. May the force be with you always.